Turkish Airlines presents Business Africa.
Hello and a warm welcome to this edition of Business Africa. I'm Ayoka, coming up. With an ambitious target of 440,000 electric vehicles on its roads by 2030, Ethiopia has a lot at stake. But will it be able to rise to the challenge? We'll explore how it can with the company Dodai. Competition or opportunity? Mobile cafés in Morocco create jobs for youth but raise concerns among traditional cafe owners. We'll take a look at the impact on the sector. In Zimbabwe, Lienne Shonhiwa founded Manetain Organics to offer natural hair care to afro hair. By becoming the first country to ban gas and diesel cars, Ethiopia is committing to e-mobility. While 100,000 electric cars are already in circulation, reaching 440,000 by 2030 remains a daunting challenge.
Africa is at a turning point in its transition to electrified transport, with crucial energy issues to be addressed. Transport accounts for around 25% of global carbon emissions from fossil fuels, raising growing concerns about energy. With Ethiopia recently banning the import of gasoline and diesel cars, it is not known if the country can really succeed in its transition to a 100% electric vehicle fleet. Faced with high fuel importation bills, Ethiopia wants to go green. However, the lack of charging infrastructure and specialized garages complicates this ambition. Currently, 100,000 zero-emission vehicles are on Ethiopia's roads, with a target of 440,000 by 2030. But with a population of 120 million, half of whom with no access to electricity, the challenge seems colossal. Enter Dodai, an Ethiopian startup which makes electric motorcycles. But declining global demand for electric cars raises questions about the potential impact on emerging markets such as Africa. If the trend continues, it could restrict the investment and innovation needed for a successful transition.
To break down the stakes in this sector, we're joined by Yuma Sasaki, the CEO of Dodai. Welcome to Business Africa, sir. You raised $7 million in your second fundraising this year. Was it difficult to convince investors, and how will the funds impact your strategy?
First of all, it's very difficult for our majority of investors from Japan to imagine what we are doing and how much potential we have. So my focus is always to convince potential investors to come just once, visit Ethiopia or Addis Ababa. And in terms of the use of this funding, we're using this funding in three areas. One, expanding production capacity in Addis Ababa. Two, procuring raw materials for building tens of thousands of electric motorbikes. And a three, obvious one, building a mission-driven talented team.
How has the government's ban on fossil-fuel-powered cars impacted your projects?
Ethiopia, the government is very supportive of the EV industry, as you mentioned, and I'm very drastic and bold. But that level of boldness is important if you really want to push the transition to e-mobility. If you wait until the proper infrastructure is set up, it will take decades. For example, you mentioned in January, the Transport Ministry banned, maybe for the first time in the world, banned the import of petrol and diesel vehicles, while the Finance Ministry at the same time introduced the significant tax incentives, including 0% import duty for electric vehicles. So that will also incentivize businesses like us in the sector of e-mobility.
With declining demand for electric vehicles in Europe, what fallout do you foresee?
In Africa, what's going to happen? It depends on not only climate positive impact, but also economic impact. But let me give an example. In Ethiopia, I don't see any negative effect, because by moving from gasoline-based vehicle to electric vehicles, you can reduce by 95% of operating costs. I think it will push even further because of the slowdown of the demand in the West. But those vehicles are already produced. So especially Chinese manufacturers might be even more aggressive to see the markets that need electric cars, including Africa. So yeah, I see that it will have an impact, but not negative one. It will even push the transition to EVs. That's what I think.
How will Dodai contribute to the goal of 440,000 zero-emission cars by 2030?
Right now, people don't know much about different EVs, whether it's cars or bike. So majority of people, at least in Ethiopia, just jump to the cheapest one. If you don't see the difference, you go to the cheapest one. But that will damage the trust for EVs in the long term. So it's a long-term game that we are focusing on building the trust by introducing a quality one that is not necessarily the cheapest, but still affordable. In the long term, we have to make sure that infrastructure for EV should be there, including battery charging stations and charging space in collaboration with the local government, Ethiopian government. In terms of infrastructure, including the ecosystem of spare parts. If you have spare parts available anytime, everywhere, then in a way, you have an infrastructure or ecosystem that reassure you.
Yuma Sasaki, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mobile cafes are emerging as a remedy for job insecurity among youth in Morocco, but this trend is raising concerns among owners of traditional cafes. Hajar Tufik reports.
In Casablanca, just like in most Moroccan cities, mobile cafes are becoming increasingly common, offering many people the opportunity to improve their livelihood. These vehicles are often found outside the city center and reflect an activity still evolving within the informal sector. I bought my car, equipped it and started working. Even though there's a bit of competition, business is going well. What we lack is a legal framework and a specific permit for our activity. Professionals in the industry see this activity as illegal competition. They point out to the regulatory gap, which they believe creates an unfair imbalance. There's been a significant drop in revenue in the formal sector. Moreover, new openings are under threat because an entrepreneur, if they see their project at risk from the informal sector, will think 1,000 times before starting a new business. With coffee prices at 60 cents and reduced overhead cost, mobile cafes are doing well, benefiting from the customers' freedom of choice and the market force. With the price they offer to customers, one wonders how such a business can be profitable. There's also the rising cost of coffee beans, which has recently increased significantly internationally. So we are curious about how they manage to stay afloat with such a low price for a coffee. As the popularity of mobile cafes continues to grow, the question remains whether traditional players will adapt to this new competition or if regulations will be introduced to rebalance the market.
From hair loss to entrepreneurship, in Zimbabwe, Lienne Shonhiwa launched Manetain Organics, a natural afro hair care solution. In a world full of wigs and synthetic hair, it can be hard to find a product that cares for natural hair without harsh chemicals. That quest is what propelled young entrepreneur Lienne Shonhiwa to venture into the natural hair industry using pure natural ingredients.
I had a postpartum shedding after I had my son, so it was just about me looking for a remedy for my old hair. I found that on the local market I was looking for products for natural hair to help with the issue that I was having, and I couldn't find anything.
Driven by the need to find solutions for postpartum hair loss, the entrepreneur founded Manetain Organics, a company that exclusively uses resources from Southern Africa for its hair care products. It is estimated that 40 to 50% of women worldwide experience hair loss after childbirth. Seizing this opportunity, Shonhiwa developed over 40 products for afro-textured hair, now available in several countries, including Malaysia.
We want to take the best of what we can offer here in Zimbabwe. We have an abundance of so many indigenous trees and nuts and fruits that we can actually put into our products. So we've done a lot of research as to say, okay, what is the one thing that makes us unique? Besides the fact, oh yes, we're catering to people with natural hair, and but there has to be something more. And one of the things is that we want to be able to shine the Zimbabwean flag high, to be able to say, you know what, this is what we can offer as Southern Africa, for example.
With the population rising in Africa, the hair care market is projected to generate a revenue of at least $11.10 billion in 2024. Lienne Shonhiwa is tapping into that market. That wraps this edition of Business Africa. Visit Africanews.com and our digital platforms to watch it again. I'll see you soon.
Business Africa was presented by Turkish Airlines.